In accordance to the 80 to 20 rule, 80% of women are romantically interested in only 20% of men. Women used to just hang out next to me in my classes while I was in high school and beginning of college, or they would offer to help me when I was working. Being one of the top 20 appealing males back then was simple. All you had to do was look cute, exercise, and dress stylishly without embarrassing yourself. Women would essentially approach you and hang there waiting for you to ask them out if you had a car and could blend in with that group of males. I realized that I had essentially fallen in the 80 to 20 hierarchy. After I eventually found my own path, I understood that if I were to resume bodybuilding and image maintenance, it would take time away from the things I was genuinely wanting to pursue in my own life. In terms of growth personally, a long-term romance was also out of the question on top of everything else. I had to find another method to fill my time as a result. I made the decision to pursue a literary profession. I discovered that the 80 to 20 rule is nothing more than male competition for access to girls and the ability to procreate. The primary issue with this today is that condoms are used by men and women, which makes any attempts to pass on your genes completely pointless. Yes, you get to have a lot of sex, but you also run the risk of false accusations, STDs, and emotional abuse. Furthermore, you must enter into a relationship, and the dangers are just not worth it. You'll be able to basically live your life to the maximum for yourself once you accept this, leaving other men to deal with the temptations that contemporary women provide. The majority of you think it's terrific, even though you've never actually been within the gathering of attractive women. You don't realize, however, that just because you appeal to females, it doesn't necessarily indicate that the women you want to date are approaching you and vying for your attention. The most handsome men are approached by the most gorgeous women. They likely believe they have nothing to lose, so they pretty much take the risk. Additionally, upper-class males frequently have to reject unsavory women. When you believe you have one under control, 3 or 4 more sneak up on you. These newcomers may be overweight or have a face that only a mother could love. The women you don't want to date will also basically approach you at work, regardless of the male's social standing. They expect to be charmed and entertained. When it comes to dating and relationships, the 80-20ths rule is also referred to as the 80-20ths principles in some quarters. According to the 80-20ths rule, which can be observed on a typical high school or college campus, 20% of males are engaging in around 80% of sex. The Pareto principle, from which this rule originates, this is the theory that claims there are 80 effects for every 20 causes. Consequently, 20 of the males in the community are said to be content, because they are frequently deposited. But the primary issue is that to have a sustainable civilization over a long length of time, you need the majority of guys in that society to get constantly laid, which creates a situation where the men are in each other's throats, attempting to win female attention and sex. In reality, they are no longer in opposition to one another. In this kind of sexual communism, every man has access to sexual reproduction. Before the advent of civilization, just about 20% of men were essentially getting the majority of the women. Consequently, by dissolving both the social contract and the marriage contract, with that, we had essentially returned to a mating game that existed before civilization. Most women of childbearing age are totally okay with having unrestricted sex with dominant males. However, when they hit the wall, that's when they panic and typically settle for a man in that category of unpleasant 80%. Many of these males will most likely simply do that to access a woman's golden vagina. It's a little concerning since those women will carry those patterns into their turbulent 20s once they graduate from college and continue to first pursue only the alpha males. They will produce many angry and resentful men in our society, but eventually those men, the majority of whom are genuine forced loneliness types of guys, will accept their lot in life and live it on their own terms. However, unless we develop some new technological solutions, that will mean that birth rates will keep declining and civilization would eventually become unstable. Due to the fact that most women will never voluntarily choose to associate with a male on an equal footing in a state of nature before either agriculture or industrialization. However, soon enough, automation will also eliminate jobs in the service industry. Therefore, communities will need to develop better ways to inspire people in preparation for whatever sexual reality lies ahead. Social and sexual conventions have changed over time as a result of the labor demands made by our industrial capitalists and overlords, no pun intended. I also believe that no attempts will be taken in the near future, short of altering our DNA, to prohibit 80% of women from pursuing 20% of men when it comes to reproduction. Because they are the majority of voters, women virtually always have their interest in mind when laws are enacted. Without imposing some sort of punishment, we have no ability to alter this reality. After all, if the majority of women think that most men are improper or unattractive in terms of their sexuality, then perhaps the only option left to them is to choke on chicken while watching X-rated movies or reading Hustler magazines. I find myself wondering if the development of the pornographic industry has been influenced by the normalizing of sexual conduct. What do you all think? That is fascinating, no? Coach Corey Wayne frequently compares women to cats, saying that they act any way they choose. However, if men continue to act in this way, they will be shamed and forced to walk like dogs on leashes. They will be degraded and restrained like animals however they please. The term hookup culture refers to the practice of engaging in sexual contact with people who are not now part of a romantic relationship. Most attractive men assume that their partners will be both horny and attractive, whereas most eager girls want their partners to be attractive. Males are the biggest losers in this situation since they have been virtually excluded from the sexual labor market over the past few decades. In the event that technology replaces these men and renders them obsolete, it's currently a race between automation and the actual sense of isolation that comes from being a man. What should they be doing with their lives? In principle, lowering women's expectations would also make everyone happier, but sadly, this is merely a pipe dream, and it's more probable that male sexual outlets like sexual androids would keep males under control. Women, on the other hand, will continue to seek out male attention, but it will be difficult to find once the employment losses caused by automation start to rise, because when a robot doesn't nag, most guys won't deal with women. The 80-20 rule favors men currently, but that may change in the future.